My name is Jennifer Vega, and I am your moderator this morning. Thank you for joining us and welcome to our panel, The New Paradigm of Masculinity. We are very excited about this. This call is being recorded and will be posted to our online outlets. We unapologetically will post it places everywhere we want to promote this. It's going to be a great call. And so by being on the call, you are agreeing to us using your face if you're on video or your voice if you come on and ask a question. So if you do ask a question, you will need to be on video. And again, there is a potential that your face and your recording will be shared publicly. If you are not comfortable with your name or your face in general being on the recording, you can go off video and use a pseudonym. But if you do want to ask a question to the panel, we will need you to be on video. We will spotlight John and the panel members and anybody who's asking the question. So it'll be, I think there'll be 5 of you total or 6 of you total on the screen that everybody will see. Be sure to mute yourselves and stay muted throughout the call. If you unmute yourself, then we will be muting you again. So for privacy and confidentiality, this is really important for us. We do create a tight, confidential container for deep work and vulnerable questions. And we ask that you personally do not record anything and put it out on your social media. You can leave that for us. If you want to take a screenshot of John and the panel members when they're spotlight, feel free to do that. But nobody else, please keep that confidential since they're not agreeing to that being on your social media. And if you have a question, the way that we're going to take questions is that you will raise your virtual hand and we will call on you as we start taking questions. And we'll try to get to as many people as possible, but we likely won't get to everybody, but we'll do our best. And when you do come on to ask a question, try to have the right question available for yourself so that the panel members could dive deep with you and support you. The chat thread is only for connecting, support, and general response. So please use it sparingly. Do not use the chat for content-based questions for the panel, self-promotion, or unsolicited critique or resource sharing or advice giving to anybody else on the call. If you have a logistical question and you need support from me, you can type, "I need assistance" in the chat and I will private message you. Okay, so I've done my spiel. Now I'm going to spotlight the panel members and I'm going to let John take it from here.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Jen. Hi, everybody. I'll let the other guys get up here. All right, we have Bryan Reeves, Beaton. We have Stefanos Sifandos. We have Preston Smiles.
Ooh, ooh.
So I don't want to spend a lot of time going into these guys' bios. They're all heavy hitters in this world, and so Jen is just going to post links to their website. You can check them out. They've got a bunch of things happening: books, programs, podcasts, all kinds of things. And just thank you all for showing up. Thank you all for showing up. I believe that we are in a really sort of beautiful transitional moment of history, right? For the first time, we get to sort of redefine the value of men, the value of masculinity, whether it's even, a thing that should be valuable, should be cultivated, should be part of the, gender conversation. And I think just for definition's sake, when I talk about masculinity, these men may have different definitions of it, but when I talk about it, I'm talking about a transmission of depth, consciousness, groundedness, heart-centeredness that any human has, all humans have, right? It's not something that is just confined to male, cisgendered identified males, right? This is masculinity is something that all of us can cultivate, can transmit. I've actually had experiences where I've taken people in front of the room and had women, transmit the masculine and men transmit the feminine. So let's just get the whole gender identification piece out on the table. So, but because men are in such an important transitional period and there's such a a call for redefining what the value of the masculine is, and redefining masculinity in general. I wanted to bring men's groups leaders and men's teachers up here so that we could address this from our spots on the front line, right? So I'm gonna moderate the panel, and I'll Jen, I'll call men out, and then you just you unmute them, and we'll go about this. First part of the call, just so everybody knows, is going to be me just dropping some topics, and then I'm gonna let these guys riff on it because I want to hear as much as I can from them. And then the second half of the call, we'll take some questions, and then we'll address stuff that's coming up as a panel. Cool with you guys?
Mm-hmm.
All right, great. And then at the end, I'll let them, give you any information about how to connect with them, more deeply at the end of the call. Jen, can you make sure to put their websites and everything in the chat, so if anybody wants to check them out while we're awesome. All right, so how would you define masculinity? Let's just start there. So let's just start with, how would you define masculinity, and is it even valuable anymore? So let's start with Connor, founder of Man Talks. Yeah,
man. Well, first off, thank you so much for having us and just diving into this conversation. Yes, unequivocally, it is valuable. I just want to start by saying that I think a lot of the challenges that we're facing today are a byproduct of a lack and a lapse in masculine connection. For me, masculinity, and I'm curious to hear what the other guys say, but for me, masculinity is a structure and a group of traits that allow us to understand what it looks like to be good at being a man. And many of us can be good men, many of us can be men, but masculinity, I think, represents some core tenets that allows us to understand what it could look like to be good at being a man. And I'm taking a very masculine, male-centric approach to my answer, of course. But I think that that's what those traits do. And for women, it can do the very same thing, right? You can have masculine traits that allow you to understand and create some structure and order in your life. And so that's what I would say masculinity is. I think it's hugely, hugely valuable. I think when we're disconnected from it as men, we can feel very lost, very confused. I think we can lack discipline and order and structure in our lives. And I think that it's a requirement for us to have really healthy, potent relationships with other men. I think that's the essence of it. For me, masculinity is charge, and femininity is a magnetism. And so for me, when we're disconnected from that energetic charge internally, we lose all kinds of connections, and we'll get into all kinds of problems. So yeah, I'll pause there and let one of the other guys answer.
Right on. Yeah, and I'd love to hear what the traits are, as you guys go through this, what traits define masculinity to you. Let's go to Stefanos.
Thanks for having me here, John. Pleasure to be with everyone here as well. So I very much resonate with what Connor said. And I read that notion of being good at being a man very well articulated by Jack Donovan many, many moons ago. And I relate to that. For me, though, fundamentally, masculinity is simply an expressive state within every human being. It's just part of the duality that exists within all of us. And my understanding of duality, or my understanding of complementary and polar opposites, is that, and not only my understanding, but my experience as well, is that the deeper we go into duality, the more the likelihood we come into this place of unified consciousness or unity, right? And I'm speaking a little esoteric and philosophical here, but the practice is to not demonize difference. The practice is to recognize that there are traits in masculinity, there are traits in femininity, and can we take ownership and practice in both? And can we be with both when needed? And can we identify within ourselves what's most comfortable and what's most quote unquote natural? And I put that in quotation marks as well, because that can be a contentious word, right? But it's really just that. And it's playing that out in relationship, in intimacy, in sexuality, in exploration, external and internal, and really getting to know oneself through the expression of, this is what I believe masculinity is. Let me explore that. Let me be that in the world. And then let me try that on and see what happens. That's what I would say as a starting point masculinity is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the things you touched that I would love for us to dive into at some point in this panel is this integration piece, right? That part of what I would consider a new masculine paradigm is an integration of our own internal feminine, is an integration of that duality. And that that a lot of the trouble we've run into in the past is men in particular unable to integrate their feminine and masculine. You could call it sensitivity and awareness. You could call it, heart and mind. You could call it a number of sort of, dual traits. But I think that's a crucial piece I know the work you guys do, and I think in general in men's in sort of this new wave of men's work. So Preston, jump on this.
Bienvenidos. Hello. And welcome.
Buenos dias.
It's good to see each and every one of you. Good to feel everybody in this beautiful ocean of devotion that we call the panel, right? And all the energy that's connected to it. So, John, can you just remind me of the question?
Yeah, it was basically what would you consider masculinity, and why is it valuable if it's valuable at all?
Yeah.
To cultivate, to teach, to try to develop.
Yeah, for me, I don't think it's extremely valuable. I think what's valuable for all humans is to become weapons. And what I mean by that is it's sort of and I'm going to go spiritual here, but we can go a million different ways. But for me, spirit can only do for me what it can do through me. And so my job is to become the type of vessel that is fully loaded. Going back to the weapon idea that may trigger some of you, pun intended. That's a whole nother one right there added on top. It's about range. It's about what's needed, what's necessary. It's about being, at Burning Man or whatever party. And when the music changes, the question is can that human shift, pivot, and be with what is necessary in the moment for alignment? And the defining of masculinity, I think we're always going to have a hard time with that. Yeah. And it's so nuanced and gigantic, right? That we can take a shot at it for sure. But for me, it's just about becoming the greatest, dopest version of me. And that will inevitably be an expression of the word that we have deemed masculinity.
Right. Yeah. This idea of range, I think, is really important. And I know you guys talk about it a lot, being able to know what's needed in a moment, what weapon, what color, what palette, what artistic practice is needed in a moment to liberate. That's the way that I would, that to me, the masculine gift is liberation, right? And, liberating hearts, liberating minds, liberating truths, and having a palette that allows us to do that feels really, really important. So, okay, Bryan,
could I just point at something? It's like the distinction between emotional intelligence and emotional agility. And because we can't be separate from those things that are in and on the body that we have labeled emotions, but learning how to be with them in a way, having agility and fitness around said emotions makes me able to, or it gives me the possibility of being able to ride those waves and use them for the greater good. Just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah. Bryan, okay, man, we teed you up for some things. So
yeah, I think this is overly simplistic, but I agree with Preston. Trying to define masculinity, man, we'll spend our lifetimes doing that. Yeah. But I think this question of, is it valuable? It occurs to me, it's like asking, is the capacity to make left turns valuable? Like, is the direction left valuable? Right. I mean, I think so. If I want to navigate my life on the planet, if I want to get certain I need to know how to turn left as equally as I need to know how to turn right. But if all I'm doing is trying to make left turns all the time, well, I can do that and I can get where I want to go, but boy, that's going to be a long route. and I'm gonna probably piss off the people in my car, might terrify some people in my car. So I think, you know, I want to just keep that question simple. I mean, these other men have you know, elucidated some beautiful things about it, but I think, you know, we need to know how to make left turns just as much as we need to know how to make right turns.
Right, without going in circles.
Yeah, exactly.
Just keep making a square. All right, so you know, I have some more topics here, but I think that all this stuff's going to get washed out in questions, and I'd love to. I think getting some people up here to ask questions feels good. So let's do that. I mean, we just laid out a little bit of it, and this is such a huge topic. So my request is that you keep your questions as brief as possible so that these guys can jump in on it. And Jen, I'll let you manage that.
Great. Thanks, John. So if you have a question for the panel, just please raise your virtual hand. You can find that under the reactions button on your Zoom screen, and we will start calling on people. Okay, Eric, I'm going to bring you up.
Good morning.
Good morning, Eric.
I'm a part-time joiner in your series, John. I appreciate everything you bring to the table. My question is based on possibly not, or a part of masculinity based on deserving. I personally have an issue with deserving or lack thereof. That being said, I'm a good man, leader, public speaker, have the qualities that can make you laugh as well, if that's necessary. If anybody on the panel wants to break into that part of masculinity, that would be great. Thank you.
Question of deserving, like whether deserving of what, love, success, abundance, etc.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Well, these guys are all really good at that question. So, Steph, why don't you jump in on this? Because Steph has to leave a few minutes early to take his daughter to the doctor. So,
Sure. Eric, great to meet you and great question. So for me, it's less about a question around masculinity. I will take it from that place as well. For me, what is underneath that is developmental experiences, essentially. You know, what brought you to a place where you struggle with deservedness? What brought you to a place in your adult life? Because I don't think it could be, but I don't think it's necessarily a new issue for you or a new contention for you. It's something that you've probably been living with for many years. And so what has brought you to that place? And so heal that core wound. And I'm being very direct and very somewhat simplistic here, but heal that core wound, address that childhood experience or those series of childhood experiences, and it changes your relationship to deservedness. From a masculine perspective, generally the energetic of masculinity, and I love what Bryan said around the left turn, right? And was what I was alluding to earlier around it's a duality. We need both. We need whatever the feminine is and we need whatever the masculine is. And there's different terms for both. Again, many years ago, I heard Michaela Boehm share go and flow energies, do and be energies, active, passive energies, yin yang energies. It just resides within us, right? But that deservedness can sometimes be associated with receiving. Receiving can sometimes be associated with the feminine energetic. And so in your life where you're not tapping into that. Now, it could be because you're so much in quote unquote in your masculine, in your doing energy, you're not able to actually receive. Doing, AKA giving. You're giving. You haven't worked that muscle to receive. So that's the quote unquote masculine, feminine stance I would take on it. But beyond that, to be really transparent, I would go into inner child work. I would go into trauma work. I would go into somatic work. I would go into the developmental experiences that you had that have provided you with a belief system in your mind and in your somatic body that you don't deserve or you shouldn't deserve or you're not good enough to deserve or I'm not worthy of deserving.
Yeah. Preston, anybody else want to jump on this?
Yeah, just briefly, just to piggyback, Steph. First of all, Eric, thank you for bringing that here. That's a big deal. And the fact that your hand up went first and that's where you went says a lot about where you're going and what you're calling in. You believed at some level that you deserved to put your hand up and be seen and heard by us. And so what I want to remind you and everybody else in this global mind that we call the internet is one of the best things you could do is to count your blessings, AKA what you appreciate appreciates, what we focus on expands. So begin to look at all the places where you have an of course living in your body, right? We know that if the lights went out in that room, Eric, because you've been in that room so many times and you've hit that light switch 1,000 times, that now, no matter how dark it is, there's an of course living in your body. Well, what we focus on expands. Yes to inner child work, yes to going back, yes to looking at and finding and sifting and sorting through the things that have traumatized us and the shame that we've held. But it's not either or. We don't have to sit and dig through our past for 78 years to finally get to X. We can also just, any of you ever had the spinning wheel of death on your computer? Eric, have you ever had that on your computer where it just like literally, well, Eric's like, nope. I definitely have.
Guy.
And you have to force quit it. Sometimes you just have to hold the button down for a long ass time. And that's what I'm suggesting. One practical tip and tool you can use, and I'm going to get off right now. I have my clients do something called joy alarms, Eric, where 3 to 5 times a day, they set an alarm, the alarm goes off, they burst into spontaneous, over-the-top joy. Voice, body, everything. Just lose your shit. Go way past what's comfortable, and what you may find is that you begin to reset your nervous system to a different calibration, and from that space, you may begin to notice that you deserve that shirt and those glasses and the electricity and all the other beautiful things that are occurring in your life. I'm complete. Aho.
All right, we'll take another question in a second. I want to come at this idea because I think I see this in a lot of men from masculine, what I consider masculine practice. And the masculine consciousness, as I would define it, is complete and whole. And usually deservedness, the questions of deservedness come from our awareness on what is not complete and whole. And so when we are aware of that which is always complete and whole, consciousness, God, even nature, even anything that is the feminine, the great masculine. When we're aware of that, the question of deservedness tends to dissipate because we're so aware of that which needs nothing, right? And that's a tough practice. That's a tough practice to bring our awareness to those kinds of things consistently. But that is how I would approach it from, say, the masculine practice lens. Focus on what's complete and whole within you, without, and see. Just notice if you lose that a little bit. If it loses its grip on you. All right, let's bring in another question. Then we'll have Bryan and Connor to jump in first. Jen, who would be next?
Thank you, Eric. Okay, we're going to Natai.
Great to see all of your faces. Hi, Bryan.
Hello.
I know you. Hi.
So when you're in relationship with a man who's starting to go into doing the deeper work or starting to be triggered in the deeper work around the mother wound probably, and with the feminine in general, how do you hold space in, oh wait, let me give you context because I'm having trouble forming the question a little bit. So there's a man who always meets me when I go there, but I'm in this work and he's open to it, kind of. And we started hitting the real serious stuff, right? The real serious stuff around his relationship with the feminine. And I went into my masculine to hold the space, but I actually wouldn't even call it my masculine. It was like fierce love feminine, but also like the warrior. Like, I'm here for you. And I held space for a month, and the decisiveness never came. The work was never pursued. And so I held a firm line and said, I can't do this work for you. And it occurred to me that I may have played right into it because his answer was not to work through it with me, but to take space. and I agreed to it. So it was like I allowed the avoidant person to avoid me even more. But what I'm wondering is, how do you magnetize the masculine to work through that situation with you without intimidating them, right? I don't even, are you guys getting this? Am I?
Oh, 100%.
Oh, I see it all the time. Yeah.
Because now we're taking space, and I'm back into the void of like, I have no idea where this is going. And I've just had to fully let go, but I'm like, my feminine heart hurts. Like I miss him. Like
Of course.
All right. Well, let's let Bryan and then Connor take a shot at this.
I'll dive in first if that's all right. Hi, Nitai. Nice to see you.
Hello.
Yeah, I feel you deeply as you speak that. One of the distinctions that I make in my work in relationships is the difference between doing relationship as invitation versus obligation. And and I also teach a tool called language needles that I learned in the acupuncture world, using language as needles to help soothe the nervous system, restore the healthy balance of chi, of flow, of energy in the body, and using language needles, sort of words, sentences that person specifically, uniquely, it would be helpful to hear. It could be one sentence like, look, you're not doing anything wrong. You don't have to fix anything, right? Little language, those work for me. Now, for my wife, that's not what she needs to hear. She needs to hear things like, your feelings matter to me, right? These little tools that help. When I've been working with couples, I'll often remind them, well, probably tell them for the first time, when you're doing relationship well, you're managing each other's nervous system. And one of the ways that we do that is through language, through what I'm hearing. And Nita, I know we know so little of what you're sharing, so I'm trying to speak in very broad terms that hopefully will serve in some way. But what I'm hearing is he probably needs a lot of reassurance that there's nothing he has to do to make you happy. And at the same time, and it's a bit paradoxical, he also needs to understand that there are things he's going to have to do to be in relationship with you. Mm-hmm. And it is a bit of a paradox, right? And I know the agony, it's tragic that our relationships have become the containers within which we men do our initiation work. From kind of boyhood to manhood. That our women, at least in heterosexual terms, have become our initiators. And that's not what intimate relationships are for, and yet that's what they've become for. And in a way, you're being this stand, which is not your job to be. But there's probably no other men in his life holding that possibility for him, holding him to account for his maturing, his stepping across the threshold into true adulthood, which I define as it's where we learn to take responsibility for our impact on others, take responsibility for being in relationship with others. And unfortunately, it is a tragedy, I believe, a modern tragedy, that you're having to fill that role. Preston,
I'm going to take another turn on this. I'm not going to go, but I just want you to know I disagree, Bryan. So I'm bringing that here at some point.
Because that's what you and I do, Preston.
That's what we do.
That's what we do.
Connor, so I'll just sort of refine this a little bit.
Please.
The masculine does not, just like the feminine does not want to be fixed, the masculine does not want to be fixed. And when we feel like you're trying to fix us, we'll avoid. Yeah. Connor, go ahead, jump on in.
Yeah. Nitai, do you want to just say something real quick before I?
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to go through the context of like a month of weekly conversations, but he told me he's never felt so safe with someone, and he's never been able to be so honest with any woman in any relationship. But there's this whole other aspect of an ex-wife, and there's all these other things. But what was happening is my basic need, my basic ask was not being met for a month. And so it was like, you feel so safe with me. He told me at the last conversation, this is the best relationship you've ever had. And I just didn't know where to go from that. Like, where do I go from everything is so amazing, but yet I'm telling you, I can't work out your stuff with your ex-wife. I'm telling you, but I'm willing to be here with you, but you don't know how to be here with me through it.
Connor, you want to take a shot at that, and then I'll close it up, because
Sorry.
It's such a big issue with women. I hear this all the time.
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like this is the classic like DM message that I get. How do I get my part? How do I get my man into the work?
How do I get my
and
man
then
to X?
When my man's in the work, how do I, And so I empathize and I understand, and I totally get where you're at. I almost always look through things, when possible, through a Jungian lens, through like Carl Jung, and he had this great quote where he said, women stand right at the edge of what a man knows about himself. Women stand right at the very edge of what a man knows about himself. Women stand right at the very edge of a man's shadow. And so when we're not careful, right, we can get caught in playing that role for him. We can get caught in being the embodiment of what he doesn't want to see about him. We can be the embodiment of what he doesn't want to understand about himself. And we can be the embodiment of the parts of himself that he's trying to claim: his assertiveness, his strength, his grounding, his clarity, his direction. And we can claim that for him because we can see, oh, you don't know how to do this. Let me show you, right? Let me stand in that space for you. And then what ends up happening is that man feels, I think you used the word intimidated. That man can feel just, disrupted in some capacity and not know why, and start to pull away because he sees you doing the thing that he feels he is lacking in. And so I'm not saying that you did anything wrong by any way, shape, or form. Like, I hope that that's not how you're interpreting this. I'm simply saying that it's his responsibility, and no amount of you pretzeling yourself into some other way of being is going to get him to claim that. No, like there isn't a necessary answer outside of he needs to be around other men that can help mirror back to him how he is disempowering himself. And until he's willing to see that and receive that from other men, he'll continue to project his own insecurities, fears, shadows, strengths even onto you, and push himself away because he's not willing to claim that part of himself within himself. And it's a very, like, having gone through that myself, it's so damn frustrating as a man, because you're like, I know something's off, I know it's me, and I don't know what the hell to do about it. But that's why we need other men in our lives to be like, dude, this is you, this isn't her, this is you right now. So I hope that gives some clarity. I hope that helps.
Yeah, men's groups. I mean, Connor's bringing up this point, and I think all of us are in. 4 of us are in a men's group together, and I know Connor's got his own men's group. So having men to be able to point out what's going on. I will say one thing, just in the relational realm, and this is often tough to hear, but the only reason why men, if he's masculine, if his essence is masculine, the only reason why the masculine pulls away in relationship is because they're not getting the energy as nutrition that they need. The only reason that the feminine pulls away is because they don't trust that we are capable of taking them somewhere that taking you somewhere that you can't take yourself. And ultimately, when you boil down the reason why we pull away in relationships, it's one of those two things. The masculine is craving some kind of energy that they can't generate on their own, or that they're not getting. And I don't know, because this is such a short conversation, but the energy of I'm supporting you and I'm kind of pushing you and I'm your oracle and all those things, like that might have been what made him feel safe, but there was likely some other kind of energy that he's craving. Just like there's probably a kind of leadership and self-reflection that you're craving.
Well,
ultimately,
I want to be careful.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry, John. I want to be careful about that. Only because, Nita, I don't want you to leave from this thinking that you didn't offer something that he needed and that's why he's pulling away. I want to be really cautious about that, only because I believe, I think we also need to separate masculinity from men, because one of the most important things that men need to learn, and an intimate relationship teaches us that, is the capacity to lean in to the challenges that arise, even when we're not getting what we so-called think we should be getting, or when she's not making it easy for us, or she's not, fucking us, touching us, loving us. She's not. Sometimes, we need a woman to keep it down, because what she's offering is too much for my nervous system to take in, actually.
Yes, but yes, I'll say yes, and when we get into, if you're in a relationship with a masculine being, if you're in a relationship with somebody who is masculine at their essence, what they're wanting is your energy, not your direction. And so it's I hear this all the time from women, and I don't want you to leave here thinking you did something wrong, but I do want to. We're talking about masculine.
I don't think it's about wrong and right, John.
Yeah.
And I think it's about, Nita, what are you in mastery of? You can't control what he does or doesn't do. That's the truth, right? What is your responsibility in this? What is your role? What are your patterns? How are you seeing yourself through this, right? And I don't say that to criticize you or judge you. I say that because that is actually what you can be empowered to make some change with, as opposed to trying to think about him doing this or being that. And I said this earlier in my comments. He's saying these things, but what is he doing? And what are you hanging on to? Where is your self-worth in all of this as well? Like, put the energetics aside, put masculinity and femininity aside for a moment. Look at it through a lens of, am I empowering myself? And is this truly what I want? Is this a relationship what I want? And you're asking, like, should I stay? Should I leave? Should I fight? Should I let it go? What is he doing? Because he's saying something, but he doesn't seem to be doing what he's saying. So what does that say about you still being in the situation? And is that a pattern for you? That would be one of my initial approaches. And I also shared that I agree with both Bryan and what Preston was saying. And I think I could be wrong, probably let Preston say this, but I think what he was alluding to was that personal responsibility piece. What are you doing in all this? Who are you being in all of this?
Yes. Let me just jump in. I want to I want to jump into this instantly. And this is for everyone.
Come on, baby.
It's not just for and Bryan and I agree a lot. Bryan's a beast, and one of the people that I look to for support in this area as well. Same with John. As John alluded to, we're all in a men's group together, and we fight all the time, and it's awesome. We also laugh all the time and joke and all the other things. So here's what I wanted you to hear, because that dude isn't here, right? So a lot of the conversation, that's what I disagreed with Bryan and Connor, is he's not here. We don't know what the F that dude actually did and did not do, and how he was and was not showing up. She's here. So let's deal with her and her patterns, which is what Steph was speaking to. I want you to know, though, let's throw all that out the window. What I want you to know as a father of 4 beautiful children, and a person who's been coaching humans and men for a long ass time, there's a point when little boys stop receiving adoration, kisses, hugs, rubs on the backs. Just, there's a certain energy, going back to what John was saying. This is what I agree with, and I'm just going to reiterate that. There's a point where little boys stop receiving that, and little girls continue to receive it. And it's weird. It's a Western culture thing, but I've had these conversations with men often where they're like, oh yeah, my son's 12. Like, I don't kiss him anymore, like X, Y, and Z. So what I want you to see is that if a relationship is set up in such a way where we're constantly working and processing often, and there's a lot of withdrawals, right? Because that takes a lot. It takes a lot for us to process shit. So we're withdrawing from the bank account often, but we're not depositing the energy of celebration and joy and just the feminine juices. That can be very taxing. And for somebody who has an avoidant pattern, they will leave. That's what I wanted you to hear, right? Not that any of that's actually true or not, but I just want you to hear that, because I have that pattern. I have the avoidant pattern, and I need what my sister got throughout the whole time. right? I'm learning to put my hand up and say, I just kind of really need a hug, and I just kind of really need you to tell me that I'm doing good, right?
Yeah.
Because we don't hear that from our friends and our brothers, and we don't go to parties and we're like, oh my God, I love your hair, and like, oh, like that doesn't happen with our friends. So if it's not happening with our girlfriends and wives, oh man, it makes sense why men are so depleted, because we genuinely still need that. Just because we're in man bodies doesn't mean that that little boy is still not in there. I'm complete.
All right, let's. Natalia, we have to move on.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
guys
Thank you
are
for being
wonderful.
so vulnerable and courageous and coming up here. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Men in relationships. And what I do think that Bryan is onto is just the level of personal, like how often, because men aren't doing their own deep work, women think that they have to come in and help direct us into the deep work that we should be fucking doing on our own. I totally agree with that, man.
Okay. We are going to call on Hunter.
Wow, awesome.
Hey.
Can y'all hear me? Can y'all hear me all right?
Yeah.
Awesome. So talking about the new paradigm of masculinity, and in my life, in my world, I'm in a lot of men's spaces and initiating men's spaces in my community. So my question to y'all is, and a challenge, a barrier that I'm coming up against is inviting men in to this new paradigm of masculinity, and finding some challenge on either how, what kind of language to use. Me under the belief that, well, my voice is just going to be heard by those who can hear it, and the others won't. And I don't really feel like I want to live in that belief pattern anymore, because there's a lot of men who aren't in the conscious communities that also need this medicine as well.
So how to invite men into doing deep work, into doing men's work? Okay, cool.
Yeah. Like any experiences or
Yeah, Steph, you want to jump into that? We were just in this debate, in our group, right? But Steph, do you want to jump into that?
Yeah, can you ask the question in a very concise way? Like,
Yeah,
just reframe the question for me, please.
Yeah, absolutely, Stefanos. How can I invite men who aren't aware of like this new age of masculinity into circles, into this way of
Great. Thank you, Hunter. I appreciate you, man. So I see, I'll answer it this way. I see when we're attempting to enroll people in our ideas of the world or the way that we want something to be, I see us in three separate buckets. There's the bucket of people where they get you. Like, you don't need to sell them anything. Like the men here, particularly Bryan, Preston, and John, and Connor, I know Connor, fairly well, but we haven't had intimate, friendship and communion together though. But these men here that I've known for a number of years, particularly Preston and John, if they said something to me, hey, I need you to do this, I'm there. Like, I'm enrolled because I know who they are, right? That I get them as a person and I'm in. Then there's the other person, like my father's an example of that, who I could beat myself black and blue. If he doesn't want to get it, or if he doesn't get it, or if he doesn't want to understand, or if he's not interested, he's a hard no. He's that person in that bucket that is just an absolute no. And no matter how many times you say something, he's not going to get it until he wants to. Then there's a group of people that go into the bucket of, I don't get what you're saying. I don't know this men's work, this new age men's work, this thing, but I'm curious. Tell me a little more. And so you don't really want to spend your time in the bucket of people that don't get you, because they're in that bucket that are really stubborn in their ego. They're stuck in their ways. And it's a lot of wasted energy in my perspective, right? If you're trying to get them to go down a path that they're not ready for. Where you want to spend most of your time is in that bucket that I mentioned last, that the people that are curious, about you and what you do and how you present, but you're not going to be all things to all people. You're not going to be able to make everybody happy or get everyone to see the thing that you're doing that you believe is important. And as a side note, it may be worth exploring why it's so important to be seen by everyone and to have everyone come into your space, every man come into your space, because you're only going to be able to work with certain men. And that's for all of us here in the men's space in context to this. And of course, spend time in the people that get you, absolutely. But that's effortless, right? Like when you put your thing out, you put your program out, you've got your diehard followers. So I think it's where we spend our focus in this sense. But again, like what's more important for me is looking at what's underneath, why or what is driving the need to have the men see your way of seeing the world.
Connor, I know you have experience with like sort of a lot of every man, right? Yeah, I know you have some experience on this.
Yeah, I mean, I love what Stefanos said, and I think that's so true. Like, don't try and bring the men in who aren't interested. We can waste a lot of time and energy there, for sure. I would really say two things. One, understanding the problems of men who aren't you is a very valuable expenditure of time and energy. The more that you can really understand the problems of men, like I fucking am fascinated by men. I think that we're incredibly interesting creatures. And so I've spent a lot of time just like, why do you think that way? What's your problem? Tell me about the challenge that you're really facing. How do I relate to that? What about my life has been very similar to you? And so I'm constantly in conversation with men, whether I'm at a coffee shop or a client call or, sitting in front of 400 guys. I'm constantly in a space of awe and curiosity of really seeking to understand who are you? What makes you tick? So that I can better communicate to those men in a way that helps them understand the value. I think that's the really big thing that maybe is missing is are you able to communicate the value to that man specifically about why he would benefit from entering into your work? I'm taking a very sort of tactical approach in the sense that you need to understand these guys so that, and I'm not saying that you don't, but you need to understand these men and a wide variety of men so that you can present the ROI. I think where a lot of men in our space go wrong is they make it so esoteric and existential that most guys are like, I don't know why the fuck I need that. I don't know why I would come and sit with you or spend a weekend with you or get on a workshop call with you. I don't understand what the hell you're even saying. And so I think that we need to do a better job of disseminating this information and creating an ROI and a value proposition for men that they get. Because for the average man, this is all gibberish for them. And so, so I would say, connect with other men and say, what problems are you facing in your life? What challenges are you facing? And see if you can just really start to connect your own experience, your own language, your own life to what those men have gone through. And then see if the content that you put out can mirror that and reflect that in some capacity. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, very helpful. Thank you.
Can I offer just one last tidbit quickly? We've all struggled with this, Hunter. What will, how do we get men into our work? It's the same question that, a lot of women ask, how do I, in heterosexual, how do I get my man to show up for the relationship? Well, we've all struggled with this question. Men don't want to do men's work. But what men are dying for is to have real conversations with other men. Mm-hmm. We're dying for it. Most men don't know that they're dying for it, but they are, because most men we're so lone wolf mindset and vulnerability. It means weakness, and there's just all the stories that cause us to feel very isolated and alone in our lives, even when we're surrounded by people. We're dying to have real conversations with other men. And so you're going to keep struggling with this, as we are ourselves. John said, Preston said, we've been kind of arguing about some things, not arguing, but us guys here that are in a men's group together, we're still in the debate of what language do we use. And, but keep cultivating the capacity to have real conversations with men, and you're going to do just fine. You are going to enroll men by your capacity to just be real with people.
Yeah. I want to pick up on something Steph said earlier, which is about magnetism, right? And magnetism is the byproduct of practice. So your deep practice, your capacity to be embodied, to cultivate chi, to touch the infinite in whatever way feels right for you. Men are unconsciously, I'll say, yearning for that. A lot of them are. And they're also unconsciously, they don't realize it till they get into a weekend and they're looking into a guy's eyes and the guy can really feel their heart. They don't realize that brotherhood, you know, the capacity to really be felt and loved by another man who doesn't want anything from you.
Yes.
So your capacity to transmit that and your capacity to be that is what will magnetize men, I've found.
100%.
Yep. All right. Cool. We'll get the next question. Thank you, Hunter.
Awesome.
Good
Thank
luck,
y'all.
man. Good luck.
Thanks, y'all. Appreciate you.
Okay, Angela.
Which Angela?
That one.
You.
The unmuted one. Yeah.
Well, and I put P on there just in case because I saw there were two of us. Wow, I'm so happy to be here. And Connor, I got so excited when you were like, I love men. It's so fascinating. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I do too. I'm like sweating. I'm like, this is just so great to hear from all of you. So thank you so much. I want to try and keep this very simple because I want your guys' feedback. Have you ever been in a position where you cannot celebrate your woman? And what has brought you to that place? I'm a dance educator and a professional performer. And I was recently in a relationship with someone for 9 months and he could not tell me, great job in your show tonight. He could not tell that. And we talked about it. And then after a while, I said, after like a month, he just couldn't come back and offer anything. I said, I can't do this. And he was like, understood. And that was it. So I don't really need to be in the emotion of it, right? But just like from the masculine perspective, like not being able to celebrate your woman. Like what is that? Like, what does that feel like?
Oh, all right. Who wants that?
I can say something to that.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why I'm sweating. I'm like, is this a big question?
Yeah, it's a beautiful question, and it's a really hurtful one, right? Not that you're doing anything wrong. It's hurtful for you. It's hurtful for us. For me, and I'm just going to answer from my experience, it's come from insecurity and low self-worth. I haven't been able to celebrate anyone, nor myself, especially my woman. It's come from jealousy and projection, and that has been formed through insecurity and low self-worth, just not believing in my own self, seeing someone else be successful or do something that they're passionate about and love, and be so disconnected in my own being that not only can I not celebrate it, I criticize it as well. And I remember I can really feel so many times in my life where I've done that in previous relationships. And it's been so painful for her. It's like taking something away from a child that they absolutely love, have just come into communion with, and you just rip it away abrasively and abruptly. I remember a time with a previous partner. She was doing capoeira. She was practicing capoeira, and I walked in the room, and I was just in a really bad mood. And there were other things that were leading into that. And I looked at her and I said, "Oh, that's not really going to help you in a real fight." And I just walked out the room. Like, she was so excited that she was like, "What the fuck is that? What am I saying?" I mean, it's completely irrelevant. What I was saying, but and that really, really hurt her. That really hurt her. She was so excited, and she was so excited to show me that she was doing something physical, and I just completely disregarded it. And so for me, it's just really insecurity, low self-worth, stuck in my own pain body, and not being willing to get out of it, and wanting to be my victim, and wanting that little boy within me that didn't get the attention to have all the attention because I'm dysregulated and I haven't really worked through that stuff. And I don't say that to shun myself. It's that combination of everything I've said and that little boy being so hurt that he can't validate anyone else because he's seeking validation. And so that's been my, in a very short condensed piece, my personal experience.
Preston, you touched, or Stefanos, you touched on something so important, that so many men are stuck in their own pain bodies. You know, and that to me is such a huge piece of this. So what to, if I could just reframe your question a tiny bit, Angela, like what to do with a man who's stuck in his own pain body? And I'd love to hear y'all's take on that, Preston.
So I just want you to know how much that must have hurt. And I called in a relationship like that. And then I and we transformed. One of the biggest, most powerful questions I had to ask myself was, why was I, because there's only really two games ever happening, the outside in game or the inside out game. Why was I creating this mirror? What was I asking for in this sacred union that I couldn't get elsewhere by way of the lack of celebration? Tell me if I'm going too deep or going too far, or if you guys are tracking. It became the biggest gift ever that this partner was not celebrating me, because it taught me and reminded me of all the places where I was giving my power away, where I was abdicating my power, where I was playing the game called Mommy Make Me Feel Good. Mommy Make Me Feel Good, which was a repeat of my childhood. So I just called in a partner to repeat my childhood pattern. And not saying that that's true for you. So part one is the mirror. Part two is culture, is the secret sauce or the poison to any ecosystem. And we did not build a culture of celebration together, nor did we build a culture of apologizing and repairing quickly together. And so the foundation of the relationship was not built on something that was sustainable. And the biggest thing that hit me after I realized that I was just repeating the pattern from my mom was that my love had conditions on it, just like hers did. So if she celebrated me, then she got more of my heart. If she was willing to do it how I wanted her to do it, then I would pour into her. But if she kept her celebration at bay, then I began to play the game called You're My Enemy. And it's this beautiful, ugly, messy push-pull where I simultaneously love this being and want them, but it feels so fucking painful to long for their love and not get it in the way that I want it to. And so there's no answer in there. I'm just sharing with you as somebody who's been in that position, what it was like and how I came through it. I'm complete.
Awesome. Connor, I'll come to you in a second. Do you guys believe, I'm talking to the men on the panel, do you believe that the masculine in a relationship, whoever's holding the masculine relationship, is responsible for cultivating the culture of the relationship?
I think it's both. Otherwise, don't be in a relationship.
Yeah.
What's the point? Cultivate the culture for yourself and be in a relationship to yourself and not with another.
Gotcha.
Well said. Well said.
Connor.
I love that. Stefanos with a definitive.
Boom.
Drop the mic.
Like, that's it. The javel went down. The hammer was dead. Thor's hammer just got laid down. That was it. I agree. I just wanted to say two things briefly. I'll try and make it as quick as possible. One, I fundamentally believe that appreciation is the currency of intimacy. Right? Appreciation is its currency of intimacy. And many of us as men haven't been given that appreciation. And so it's very hard for us to give what we've never received.
Yeah.
Right? We have not been trained in the art sometimes of giving appreciation. And so in order for us to do that, it seems foreign. I think the other thing that I would just say real quick is that there are spaces where men are being taught not to do that, right? So that's just a bit of a red flag. And I would say it's not your responsibility to bring that man in, and it's not your responsibility to try and convince him of otherwise. And, you know, it sounds like you did all the things in the right direction. And I think that it's up to us as men to bring that culture of appreciation back into masculine relationships, because that is going to ensure that we can have masculine intimacy with one another, which is so freaking important, because then we can bring that out into our relationships, and we can bring that to our family, and we can bring that to our world and our work and all those other places. So anyway, that's all.
Yeah. Bryan, I'll throw this question at you. Why do men get stingy?
Why do men get stingy? Well, that's a general question.
I know, but that's what she's talking about. Dude was stingy.
Oh, stingy in this capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think well, Connor just hit on something. We're not practiced at it. We don't, you know, one of the things that I do in my men's groups is I build in 15 minutes into every 2-hour session of celebration. Like, it's literally has 15 minutes of celebration. We open the floor. What are you guys celebrating? There's usually silence for a little bit, because we're not practiced. I think, you know, Connor said it. We weren't taught to celebrate as our if anything, we're taught to look at what's wrong and go there. You know, and if I wasn't celebrated, why the fuck should I celebrate anyone else? If I haven't been celebrated for a long time, and I think that's the case for a lot of men, why do you deserve celebration? So I think there's that again, that projected internal, you know, Angela, I'm so glad that you didn't hang around for that.
Oh.
I get how heartbreaking it is too, that when you said, I can't do this, he said, understood. Oh man. You know, I love what Byron Katie said. When someone leaves me, I know I've been spared. Right? Not that he left you, but anyway, you were spared, because that's a man that, as Preston was saying as well, that hasn't cultivated the culture of celebration. And I think that that's something that we men need to cultivate, because it's not something that is widely practiced. Quite the opposite.
Okay. Thank you, Angela. I appreciate your question, and good luck.
Yeah, may I just briefly? I just thank you guys so much. It's been very affirming, and I love this, because I did give him that. He's an artist, so I gave him that feedback of like, your show's so great, blah, blah, blah. And then this, you know, performing on a stage, 0, nothing. I'm like, did I make the right move? So this has just been very affirming of like, not my girlfriend saying, oh, he's stupid or whatever. It's like, yeah, you made that right move. So just so much gratitude. Thank you guys.
Yeah. And this whole thing about men and their pain bodies, it's a really crucial piece of what I think the pain that women, or, you know, whoever their partners are, feel. And what I see a lot is malnourishment, you know, lack of brotherhood, this sort of the quintessential burden of drama, you know, drama of burden. You know, I'm so burdened, I've got so much to do, da 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 da. And when a man is not generous, it's because he's not full. And I think that's part of the thing, going back to our other friend's question, Hunter, I think his name was, like, men know they need to get full. They just don't quite know how. And hopefully, you know, hopefully some of them watching this will be inspired. All right, Jen, let's jump into another question. Thank you all for your questions, and thank you, Angela.
Thanks, Angela. Okay, Dave Cook.
Hello, can you hear us?
Oh yeah, we're getting a twofer.
Yeah.
I love it.
Hello, this is such a fantastic conversation. We are just so appreciative of all of it. My question, it's more on the relationship side, so a little different than what the conversation has been thus far today. So Dave and I were married. We've been married for 13 years, and the past 5 years we've been very depolarized, and we've been doing the work now for Dave, it's more recent.
Yeah, mine's like maybe about a month and a half now.
And I've been doing it for longer. My question is, I'm really struggling to find my way back to feeling that passion and that connection with him because of how things were for so long. And since he's come online about a month ago, he's doing everything that I could have ever wanted him to do all of those years, everything. And it makes me cry when I think about it because he's literally does everything. But I can't seem to find my way back to that, passion and being in love with him. Although I love him, that part of it I just can't seem to find. So my question is is there a practice that you can think of that might help me to reconnect to that with him?
Quick question back real quick. What do you mean by since he came online about a month ago?
Meaning the way that we see our relationship is understanding the polarity from the perspective of the way David, Data, and John talk about it is I've been more in the masculine, he's been more in the feminine, and we just completely have been disconnected.
Drifted apart over the years.
Well, polarity's only half of it.
Okay.
Repair, and so intimacy, and I'll let Bryan or Connor jump into this, right? Repair is the other half, right? The nervous system capacity is just as important as polarity. And if you have polarity without repair, it won't click. Right. So I don't know, Bryan, this is.
Well, what I'm also thoughtful about is you spent 13 years getting yourself to this place.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a month since you've started to do something different. I mean, is that about right?
That's about right. She was in it more. She started back in October maybe with this, and I'm more new to it because we had grown so far apart.
So I like this word momentum. You've had 13 years of, let's just say, unhelpful practice,
right,
in this domain. 13 years. And now you got 30 days under your belt of a new way of practicing.
New paradigm.
That's going to take some time to I love that you're asking these questions. This is beautiful. You're in the question, you're in the inquiry. And that's really important. That's so critical. Congratulations. You both are here. I want to applaud you now. And I'm going to just back off because I think that point, I know these other men have some beautiful things to share about this, but I just want you to be mindful of, I often tell couples, expect it to take 10 years before you get really good at being with each other. And that's after you start trying to be really good with each other. Give it 10 years.
I wonder if the question, Bryan, then, which is a beautiful question, is, you both willing to be in that? I have to run, unfortunately, now, but are you both willing to sit in that?
That's right.
And also, are you both willing to give each other grace as you shift massive patterns that have been established for 13 years with each other? And the other question that I would have, and I'd leave you with this, is, you mentioned that I've been more in my masculine and Dave's been more in his feminine. And I'm wondering if you still feel you're in your masculine or if you've fully embodied your feminine, or however you define that.
Mm-hmm. You asked the question, right? So who's in the masculine?
You also did 99% of the talking as well.
You need a book to write it down. Right?
Okay. All right. Well, at least we're co-leading now, right?
I love you all. Thank you. I'll leave you with that question.
Steph.
I appreciate you all very much. Blessings.
Thank you.
Can I just add one quick thing real quick? Oftentimes in relationships, it's set up as the addict and the dealer, the knower and the unknown. I'm the good one. I've been in the work and you haven't. So you report to me. And I just want to remind you all that neither one of you was bad or wrong. You just did the best you could with the tools and consciousness you had available. Marriage is not easy. I don't know if you had kids as a part of that thing as well, but that could fuck you up real quick as well. And so when you add all those things to the mix, and then you add Disney and all the social and historical programming and all the things your mom and his mom and your dad and his dad and his dad was and was not, and all the repression around all the different emotions and things of that nature, and the patterns you use to stay safe, the things that you use to become something. And now you are both unweaving and unlearning and rewiring together. My biggest thing as a married human with 4 children is it's a game of inches. And like nature, everything happens in seasons and cycles. So biggest thing, take off the table that she's the better one, because you're not. I will say that to you directly, and it's no disrespect to your wife. You're not better. Just because you've been in the work longer, you're not better. You're just an awesome human who chose an awesome human. Out of 7.7 billion people, you two called each other in to help heal each other's nervous systems. You called each other in to have wonderful, amazing experiences and gut-wrenching, fucked up experiences side by side. And you're still here. You're still doing it together. And the fact that you're even on this call, arms linked, asking questions is beautiful. It's a game of inches and seasons. Take what you can. To me, this whole thing, going back to the culture of appreciation and celebration, build things into your culture where you two get to have new shared memories from this consciousness. Couples can get so serious, especially when they get in the work. Everything's got to be about the work and processing. Go do stupid, fun stuff together again. That's my truth.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. One thing I'll add to this, because I see it all the time, is to please, please, please don't weaponize masculine and feminine. He's not being masculine enough. She's not being feminine enough. Like, please don't weaponize that against each other, because that is so hurtful and so debilitating for intimacy. So yes, cultivate your feminine because you want to be full of life and love and pleasure, and cultivate your masculine because you want to be deeply rooted and connected to the infinite, and do it for yourselves first, and then try to come together from that full place, and polarity will just happen naturally. But it never happens. I've never seen polarity get cultivated from you're not being masculine enough or you're not being feminine enough. Never. Connor.
Okay,
Thank you, John. Thank you.
Sorry, it's Dave and what's your name?
Darlene.
Darlene. Okay, Dave and Darlene. Darlene, can I just ask you like 2 questions?
Sure.
Yeah. So you sound angry and resentful. Is that true?
I feel mostly sad. So I don't know if there's anger underneath that, but like I most identify with just feeling sad, like grief.
Okay. Yeah. Sad about what specifically?
That
and maybe just pause it if you can turn to him and tell him.
Sure. I feel sad because I see that you're trying and I can't get back to that place.
Right. I understand that. I also know that we're new to this, and it's going to take time. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Right?
Pause there, Dan. Both of you just take a breath. Connect again. Just take a breath and stay connected. And Dan, all I want you to just say is thank you. Just say thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I would say part of the practice that Preston is talking about, if possible for the 2 of you, I would invite is to have a practice where, Darlene, you can express some of that sadness, because grief can be a barrier to intimacy. And I wasn't too sure if it is anger or resentment, like, why haven't you been holding this for me? Or how come you haven't shown up for me in this way? Sometimes that happens, right? I've needed you to show up in this way and you haven't. I can't feel you. But if it's sadness, give yourselves a practice, once a week, twice a week, where you can sit down, you can connect face to face, you can breathe.
I've been doing personal growth work in many forms for about 30 years.
I don't know where that came from.
But men's work only for the last 4 or 5 MK.
Anyway, whoever's
I am on it.
Thank you. So I would just try this practice, because I am going to just say, maybe, perhaps, I don't know if this is true or not, that as you get to voice some of that grief and that sadness, and Dave can hear it and be with it and just be present for it without needing to fix it, and just say, like, I hear it, I see you, thank you for sharing that with me, that trust is going to be rebuilt, intimacy is going to be rekindled, and that tension that has been withholding you from reconnecting with him will polarize. Okay.
Yeah.
So I would just invite you to try that. It's not the sexiest of practice, because sometimes it's going to be messy and full of tears, and sometimes anger is going to come out, maybe some resentment, some sadness, all those things are going to come forward. But that's the part of you that I would imagine that you were withholding for a long time. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're in the masculine, Dave or Dan? Dave. Dave, you're in the masculine, Dave, when you're doing what Connor's talking about. Naturally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, I can feel that you're still sad or still angry. Tell me.
Right. And
That's a
not trying to
masculine
not trying to convince her of your point of view. Right. Well, babe, it's going to take a lot of time. Bryan said it's going to take 10 years. You got to expect, no. Just
so,
thank you.
Yeah. Should I respond back to her, or just say,
thank you?
Nope. Because respond will normally come from your defense, which is, I'm only in it for a month, right? Which is exactly what you did.
You're pulling her back into her masculine then. You're asking her to step back into perspective with me. Stop feeling, go into your head. Let's look at this from a logical perspective. And you're right back then. You're pulling her into the very thing that she's not wanting to go into.
Yeah. Okay. And I'll say this, I want to say this for any other couples that are on this, right? Like, the patterns from our family, from our childhood, from 13 years together, from your mother, your grandmother, like the epigenetic patterns, that karma is thick. That pattern, those patterns are thick, and they take more work than we think. I know that you guys are in the work and I'm not sure exactly what you're doing, but it always, to shift the family karma and the karma of 13 years together, and the momentum, as Bryan said, takes longer and takes more work than we think. So please don't be discouraged. Keep at it and keep staying open to each other, but understand that it does take more work than we think to change those patterns in ourselves and in the relationship. Because there's three of you. There's your pattern, there's his pattern, then there's the relationship, and all three need to change, and it takes a lot of fucking work. So good luck.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. I think we have time for one more question, maybe two.
Okay. Let's go to Jacob O'Neill.
Turning into high-powered coaching. I love it.
Yo, hey, man. My question is quite straightforward. I would love to know what some of these new paradigm masculine practices are. This is something that I'd love as something for myself, something for my relationship, and something for my purpose work. And I know that they're all intertwined, but I'd love to know something that is to fill my cup, for me to bring my gift to my relationship, and then something that can amplify my impact in the world.
That's a great question. Yeah. Who wants to jump on that? What new paradigm practices would you have? Or how would you offer someone who says, hey, listen, I want to change the way that I relate to my masculine or relate to being a man? What would you offer as a basket?
Relationally, I'll just speak relationally for a moment, because that was really what I stepped strong into before I met my wife 6 years ago. I spent years, and I understand, Jacob, you're in relationship now. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I've been in a relationship for 7 years.
What practices do you currently do with your partner that you would say are expressions of your masculine?
One of similar to what you spoke to before, I'm very good at receiving my woman in her full expression. I'm very good at asking questions that draw her into a deeper sense of feeling. So that's something that I do regularly. At the moment, where I'm at in my relationship is my partner's in a sense of turmoil, and I'm finding myself wanting to fix. Yeah. So she doesn't feel connected to and I'm normally pretty quick to catch myself. However, recently I'm feeling on fire with purpose, and it's 1 a.m. and I'm in Australia, and I'm just I want to stay up all night and just continue to work and create. And right now I'm feeling like her process is a burden. So that's where I'm at right now.
Her process meaning, what do you mean by that?
So she's feeling unloved. She's feeling there's a sense of not feeling loved, and there's a sense of also I'm excited by life, and I feel like I can almost saturate her at the moment with my excitement for what I'm bringing to the world. So I feel like I'm taking up a lot of space, to be honest.
Yeah, you are. You are. Connor, you had your hand up. I'll let you jump in on this. Okay.
Well,
Okay. I'll say
Go
one
ahead,
thing.
Jeff.
I'll say one thing. If you are on purpose and she doesn't know when love is going to be honored, like Thursday night at 6 or Saturday, right? When she doesn't have a very clear understanding, then she will feel ungrounded and unseen. So part of the masculine gift is to be able to, if you're going to be on purpose 5 days a week or 6 days a week, to be, so she's super clear. I'm going to love the fuck out of you Thursday night. I'm busy, And so I'm just going to simplify it because you asked about the new paradigm, like awareness and life force. The cultivation and the integration of both of those things are the essence of what I would consider deep masculine practice.
Jacob, you have to understand, and that what John just said, that's a really important practice. I like the word containers. But I want to say something first. You are always going to feel the tension between mission and relationship. Your relationship is going to very often feel like a distraction from your mission. That is a tension we must learn to live with, to be with, to almost, I don't know that I'll ever enjoy it, but I mean, and that's so much, I think, of what John, these practices we're teaching, how to be in discomfort. That never goes away. It's even built into our pop culture. I mean, the Mission Impossible movies, Tom Cruise, his character, literally, it's written into the plot. He cannot be married because if he's married, he cannot save the world. The world will die. A third of the population will die if he's married to a woman. That's built into the fucking plot. Right? So, and what does he choose? He chooses mission. Of course, that's the noble choice, mission over relationship. So, Jacob, this is built into our programming. And so, and it's just part of, I think, the masculine nature, right? It's like, we want a direction, outcome, collapse everything. John was telling me yesterday, we went out and had dinner last night. He was saying, I want another house, where I get to just be by myself, my no demand house. Called it my no, I need a no demand space. Oh yeah, of course. No demand, where no demands are being put on me. So I just want to speak that piece. I think the practice John just gave, relationally being so clear. I have a little board outside of my office where I let my wife know, okay, it's work time, which means you don't get to come in here. It's open play is where she gets to come here. I mean, look, we're not that strict about it, but I'm communicating to her when I'm on my mission mode and when I'm not. And that distinction is helpful to both of us.
I've been scheduling stuff in and I've been nailing that. But what I've been bringing to that container is more of my purpose. I'm like, here's what I'm doing. Here's everything that I'm doing.
Smack her. You might as well just smack her.
Yeah. So
poke her with a needle.
I thought I was doing the right thing by saying, okay, cool. Like I had a whole day on Sunday planned and I did so many things that were right. But within that, I was constantly talking about myself. I was filling the space rather than, so I see now that I thought I was doing the right thing, and to a degree I was, but there was what I was filling the space with that was limiting her, like her ability to feel, feel seen and loved.
The storm does not want to be fixed. The storm wants to be felt, And so if you show up on Sunday without the capacity to feel the storm or whatever's there and celebrate it, then you've missed a piece of your practice. In my opinion. Yeah. All right.
Can I just add something?
Go ahead.
You said something which was one of the practices I was going to remind you of, which is schedule it in, and I'm talking about purpose and self and woman.
Right.
I for years hated the term happy wife, happy life, like viscerally hated that term. But the longer I am in a marriage and a relationship, I realize that we could just replace that with happy partner, right? Because they're so deeply connected. When my wife and I are fighting, everything else feels like there's a cloud on top of it. And so I want to remind you, Jacob, and everybody else in here who's striving towards something, to sit in the question, for the sake of what? Right? I want to get to the top of this mountain so that I can, and then I could be happy with my partner and my kids. Well, fuck, bro. How about you do that now while also striving to the top of the mountain? And that's the thing that sometimes we don't remember or get to. And I've had the good fortune, and also, it's just epic that I was broke as hell, 33, living with my mom, and now I'm a multimillionaire. So I know the distinction. I've seen the difference, and seen all the traps that I went into, thinking that money or that thing that I got would fill that thing up. But it's for the sake of what? And, hopefully you don't get hit by a bus and die in the next 2 years or whatever the case may be. But life can be interesting, bro. Seasons come. And so what you don't want to do is look back and say, oh, I missed 5 years of potential adventures and amazingness with this person that I called in because I was so focused on getting to the top. And what you may find is that you're still trying to prove to the bullies or to your dad or to your brother, who was the smart one, that you're better. And that's what I was doing. I was trying to prove that I wasn't my dad. And, not that it was wrong or bad, but at some point you got to wake up. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah. The I'll be free when myth.
Yeah.
I'll be able to love more when myth. Men are so fucking, stuck.
Or I'll be celebrated when.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's get one more in before we let everybody go.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jacob. Okay, Anya, we'll close it out with you.
Awesome. Hi, gentlemen. So grateful to be here. I have a bit of a macro societal question. Maybe it's perfect for the last one. Connor, I listened to one of your episodes on your podcast, which outlined etymology of patriarchy. And I thought it was beautiful. So pato, archi, father, to uphold, this really beautiful kind of like indigenous way to think about the word patriarchy. And it just makes me feel good. Meanwhile, we've got our modern context, of course, where everything that's like backed by power or greed, everything that goes wrong is like blamed on this word, this entity, which I think is actually just kind of boundaryless capitalism, or maybe there could be a different word. So I'm curious, in your work, in your life, how you think about the actual word patriarchy as it was meant to be. Do you think there's space to re-energize this word with a new paradigm? Or do you think it should just go away and maybe we should think about it differently? Yeah.
Okay, Connor, jump on that, man.
The light question to end.
I know.
Just can you comment on the patriarchy?
Knew it was
and
coming.
I love that I get to go first too. It's just like, throwing me into the fire. It's good. No, I appreciate the question, and I appreciate you tuning in. And I had this conversation with a man named Stephen Jenkinson. I did this series called The Wisdom of Elders because I believe that part of the masculine paradigm that we're talking about is a reemergence of trusting elders, trusting elder masculine energy, trusting elder men who have largely vanished and disappeared from our culture. We have olders, we have old men that are not wisdom keepers that young men like us do not trust anymore. That we don't get lifeblood from. And so I had this conversation with Stephen Jenkinson, and he brought that forward. We had this whole dialogue about patriarchy being patros, which is the father, and archi, which is to uphold, essentially. And so it's what it really means, essentially, was to uphold the father. And we've made it mean a lot of different things now within our culture, and it's become the sort of whipping post for a lot of the social cultural problems that we want to go away, but the word isn't going to go away, and we can't just sort of systematically try and dismantle things and words like patriarchy, like masculinity, because we've been wounded by them or hurt by them, or we see them as the problem, or we want to systematically change them. And if we do that, then our problems will dissolve. I think that that's kind of an illusion that we've started to adopt socially and culturally. So that's a very broad statement. I'm going to narrow this down by simply saying we actually need to uphold fathers. A lot of the work, if you listen to what Stefanos and Preston and John and Bryan are talking about, is a sort of initiation into manhood, a preparation into fatherhood, a healing the wounds of the absent fathers that we grew up with, or the abusive fathers that we grew up with. And when we don't uphold the father, it is damaging to our culture, our societies, our families, our boys. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on and on and on and on. We could talk at infinity about the detriment and the damage of not having healthy fatherhood in our culture. And I don't think that we should abolish that role. I don't think that we should demonize that role. I think that we collectively are starting to do the work to bring the village back around the father and say, what happened? And I think a lot of it is because we have sent men off to wars over the last 150 years, and we're feeling the generational pulse of that as it wreaks havoc through our society and culture. And so I think that we actually need to come back to fathers and surround them more and hold them and help them and support them and encourage fathers to get into groups like Empowered Brotherhood or the Alliance or the ARC. I think it's ARC. It used to be called the Samurai Brotherhood, but Ben will drop it in. There's ARCA. There's so many good men's groups that are out there. And so I would just say, welcome fathers into that space and invite fathers back into that space. And press against this notion a little bit of demonizing and making the patriarchy the problem. Even just calling it the patriarchy, it's like, right. There is no the patriarchy. There is patriarchy within the semblance of the family, but we are looking for villains in our culture right now. We are witch hunting. And it's just to the detriment of so many young boys and so many young women today. And so that's my TED Talk, and thank you for coming, and I'll pass it over to the other men.
I love this. The history of this, if you know the history of it, starts with the church, right? Sorry for any Catholics or Christians on here, but the church in the medieval times through created the patriarchy as we know it, and it manifests destiny and slavery and the ownership of women and the institution of marriage as they, what I mean? All of that has a very clear history now that we're understanding, and part of this whole new paradigm of masculinity thing was my attempt at going, all right, so strength, power, winning, accumulation, that's how winning as a man has been defined. So what if we change that? We turned it on its head to presence, depth, wisdom, like Connor was talking about, open-heartedness, awareness, and different currencies, right? What if we started to look at winning differently? And I think that's what men like us are trying to instill, little by little into the ethos of this. Bryan, do you want to take us home on this?
I learned a few years back from an indigenous woman in California when I was living there that she told the stories of when Europeans first came to America, the tribal peoples that they met, women and men ran the councils. I mean, women and men were equally in shared power. And yet when the essentially white Europeans came here and wanted to meet with their leaders, the indigenous people quickly learned that they didn't consider women leaders. And so they didn't want to meet with the women. So the tribal people, the indigenous people, sent men to meet with them. And I think I was just, I grew up with very strong mothers, and really, absent fathers, let's just say. And I literally mean two mothers, mom and a stepmom, and they held my world together. I remember at 17 years old looking at my mom in the kitchen one day thinking, damn, why aren't more women running shit? Because she's amazing, and I'm looking at all these buffoons out here, like Connor said, a lot of olders, not many elders. And I think that a big part of the healing of our culture, and I think we're in wrestling with this now. I mean, all these different movements, like the Me Too movement, these are all different. We're wrestling with even the identity movement. We're wrestling with how do we bring woman, feminine, back into her rightful place alongside the leadership responsibilities of the masculine, let's say. I think that's a question we must keep wrestling with, and a lot of my work is I think just supporting women, continuing to support women in leadership roles and the education of women worldwide. I think that is one of the most important things that we can continue to do to heal this rift that we call patriarchy.
Yeah. Okay, this is such a huge topic, guys, and I appreciate it. And Stefanos and Preston, who I will thank again. It's such a huge topic. Thank you, Anya, for your question. And thank you all for showing up and just participating in this. This was my first attempt at trying to bring what I know we're all working on into a public discourse. I hope it was helpful, and I hope it opened up some new ways of thinking about this stuff. Anything that you guys want to just let them know that you're working on, or that you want them to anybody who's interested in learning more from y'all? You want to just do a quick plug or
shameless plug?
Choose her every day or
choose
leave
her every day
it.
or leave it. It's my book that's out. Choose her every day or leave her. You put our websites on there, so that's super helpful. And I also have a podcast called Men This Way, where I'm also seeking to elevate the wisdom of elder men as well. Connor.
There's some great guests on that podcast too, and I know Connor
including John Wineland and Connor Beaton.
I would just say, because I don't know if John's going to do it, but I would just say go buy John's book From the Core if you haven't. I've been honored to read it, and it's awesome, and it's what I think a lot of men need to ingest right now, psychologically and emotionally and spiritually. So I'd say go check that out. If you're looking for a men's group, go and check out the Man Talks Alliance. I have 400 or 500 men in there from around the world. It's a great space to be in, and I have a book next year coming out. So follow along if you dare.
What is your book, John? What's
My
the
book
title?
is called From the Core. You can pre-order it from Amazon, and apparently it helps if you pre-order it, because then the bookstores know that people want it. And so if you're going to get it, pre-order it. That would help us out. But thank you for the plug, Connor.
And Connor, your book is?
It's just called Men's Work.
And when's it coming out?
January 23.
Beauty.
Got it.
Beauty. Yeah. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you again. And thank all of you for being part of the conversation. Maybe we'll do this again, but I'm so glad that we got to, bat some of this ridiculously deep topic around and serve some people. So thank you, guys. Have a beautiful, thank you, Jen, for helping support this and hold this. And thank you all for showing up. We'll see you soon. Ciao.
Thanks, everybody.